A very good evening to you and welcome to this live virtual forum on this African Anti-Corruption Day. Now this year will mark the 5th edition of the African Anti-Corruption Day, and it's being commemorated under the theme Regional Economic Communities, critical actors in the implementation of the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. Now African states have indeed made significant efforts in the fight against corruption, including the establishment of national laws and the creation of anti-corruption agencies. But of course, much more still needs to be done. Well, joining me to discuss the importance of this day are my guests, Dr. Abdi Malim, a commissioner at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Alexander Muteti, the Senior Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions at the ODPP, Sylvester Kini, the Deputy Auditor General, Finance Audit Services at the Office of the Auditor General, and Dr. Kevin Desai, the Principal Secretary at the State Department for East African Community, Ministry of EAC and Regional Development. Thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us on this critical day. Dr. Malim, I'll begin with you. And here in Kenya, the celebration is being spearheaded by the Kenya Leadership Integrity Forum. Tell us a little bit more about this and why this is such an important day to Kenyans.
Good evening, viewers. Thank you very much. We are very pleased as Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and also as the CLIF, which is the Forum for Leadership Integrity, as you mentioned. We are here to really celebrate and join the rest of African countries in the celebration of the African Anti-Corruption Day, which is today. And I would like to bring to your attention that this program is spearheaded by CLIF. CLIF is, as we mentioned, the Kenya Leadership Integrity Forum, which is an association of stakeholders across the country, from the executive, the legislative, the judiciary, the private sector, the civil societies, and all, and also the very important people like the media and the religious people. Now, this is actually a stakeholder agency that is spearheaded by EACC as the secretariat, and its work is really to join hands and fight against corruption. The war against corruption cannot be fought only by EACC. So we have made this stakeholder, and our chairman is the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, who's the chairman of that, and I will talk more about it as we proceed in the course of the day. Thank you.
All right, Alexander, I'll bring you in at this point. Where do you think we are as Kenya when it comes to the fight against corruption? As I mentioned, many African nations have made significant strides. Where are we?
Well, thank you, Suriti. Thank you for inviting us. What I would say from where I sit, I think as a country, many people may not believe it, but then the fact is we have made very serious strides in the fight against corruption, and we are not done with it yet. But one of the things that we must all realize is that the fight against corruption is not an easy job. So there are processes that we must go through. We must ensure protection of human rights of suspects and accused persons and everybody who is in the justice chain. But I could say with confidence that as a country, we are on the right footing. And I think none other than His Excellency, the President, has made it very clear. The government is committed to eradicating the vice. So it's a matter of time before everybody starts crying around that you are targeting one of our own, because I believe once we start now getting the convictions that everybody yearns for, then that's when people start realizing how serious this fight is. But it is on, and we are happy with the game.
All right, Sylvester, do you agree with that the government does have the will to fight corruption? We're constantly seeing various government officials deep in corruption. What are your views based on what Alexander has said? Sylvester, can you hear me? I think you may have muted your microphone.
Thank you. I'm sorry for that. Yes, I have heard what my colleague has said, and war against corruption, it is war which has to be fought and which has to be accomplished. From our perspective, as the Office of the Auditor General, we have really done our best. We have produced volumes of reports which have been really discussed by the Parliament, and recommendations have been given, and some of the recommendations have resorted to some people arraigned in court. Yes, I agree with my friend, the war on corruption is still on process, but still there is need also to act on some of the recommendations which have been made by Parliament. Parliament has made several recommendations, and unless all the recommendations have been fully implemented as Parliament has given in the resolution, then it is still a long way to go. So I agree, yes, there is a lot of progress, but there's still more to be done.
All right, more on that shortly. Kevin, what has the impact of corruption been on the region?
Well, indeed, it's a daunting challenge. It is multifaceted. It creates challenges with respect to both the economic and social value proposition in terms of its overall development. It creates a great distortion of markets that would otherwise be potential both from an economic and a jobs perspective. It creates a challenge with respect to finding ways in which we're able to keep our development path steady. Indeed, it's ingrained within the constant value proposition we create by way of social, economic and environmental challenges. And I believe that this has a multifaceted challenge with respect to our development purpose.
And where does Kenya lie in comparison to our neighbouring countries when it comes to the war on corruption, Kevin?
I think that indeed we have, by way of our overall development, our overall engagement within the East African community, within the African Union Convention, we have made tremendous progress, and this is further now aggregated by way of our involvement in various initiatives and programs which include the East African community, as well as the what we see with respect to ECOWAS as well as SADC, and that influencing role which plays a complementary capacity towards our internal challenge and our ability to address corruption within our country. But I think that what is also very important here is that by way of harmonizing legislations and policies and regulations and other key structures, we are able to create the necessary framework to promote that aggregation as we go along.
All right. As the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Dr. Malim, what sort of strategies has the EACC put in place to fight corruption here in Kenya?
Thank you. I am very happy that my colleagues have mentioned the impact and the state where we are at the moment in the fight against corruption. I agree with Mr. Muteti that we are really doing a good job, and but the war is still too long to be won. First of all, because of the multifacetedness of the corruption, the complexity, the new trends of types of corruption that's actually coming with the modern technology, EACC, and also the number of cases that we get, we have adopted a strategy of trying to see what is the best way to make impact in the fight against corruption. Point number one, what we are really at the moment focusing on is high impact cases. High impact cases, these are where the case actually involves a more prominent person as the suspect. Number two, the amount of money that is really taking place, which is involved. For instance, and some of the major, as we have seen, the major conduit for this type of corruption is major national and county governments projects that actually are multi-billion shillings. So we also look for such. And then also we look at what is the status of that type of, what do you call crime, and the image of the people. What is really at stake for the Kenyans? There are people, there are places where when you look at it, there's a high interest in the case rather than what else. That's one which we use. Number two, and which is really also giving a lot of impact, is asset tracing and recovery. And this is really very, very important, because at the end of the day, you steal the properties or you do corruption because you want to enjoy the benefits that you got. But this trend of asset tracing and recovery really helps preventing that. So the money that you have stolen will never be used for your leisure. So we recover from you all that we thought you have gotten through the method of your use, whether it is stolen public property or other ways. So we recover that money, and it's really worked very well, and it's really paying a lot of dividend. Number three is actually engage, and really one of the most important stakeholder, as I mentioned, the cliff, are the publics and the various agencies that we collaborate. We have really to give prevention, increase the public education and awareness, so the public themselves become the watchdog. They cannot sit behind and wait. And when we carried some research, we found out of 10 people who actually experienced corruption, only one reported. Only one.
And why do you think that is?
Yes,
is it because the public, members of the public know that we don't really have a working system in place to fight corruption?
I think one of the things that, what is making the people, sometimes they say, oh, we don't know how to report, but we have really put in place various, and I will talk as we go progress in the course of this program, and that's why we have put in place a very, very robust and pragmatic prevention strategies, where we equip the local people, the county people, the ministries through the cliff, so that at least every agency is aware what is supposed to be done. And if there's a citizen who have seen, by the way, it is your responsibility to report any crime that you see. So keeping quiet, it's really a criminal by itself. So it's people sometimes say, oh, we don't know where to report, or, we don't know, maybe they're afraid, but we are really trying to put off that. And finally, the other aspect which we have used as a strategy, which is the fourth one, is partnership. EACC cannot do itself. And I'm very happy our PS here is from the Minister of East Africa, East Africa Community is here. We have made such strategy and partnership within and also within the region and internationally. And this is really very, very important, because corruption is cross-border activity. It is really taking money from Africa to Europe, or from Kenya to other parts of Africa, and the rest. Right. So we have really to have this type of partnership, which has really given us a lot, and we encourage and continue to really give us. And I'm happy the East Africa Community is actually coming up with these protocols and other issues to help, and also the African Union, which is really appointed this day for celebration. Those four key areas are our strategy in the fight against corruption, just to mention a few.
Smithy, right. I just wanted to emphasize here that indeed this collective approach is a solution. It's innovative in that this is indeed a social problem, and it cuts across so many different kinds of stakeholders, and therefore, all stakeholders need to be jointly responsible and jointly act for the ability to address it. This then is further compounded by the East African states and partner states. Amongst various features that support what we're trying to do at CLIF is indeed the East African Community and its treaty, which really expresses a determination towards addressing aspects of governance as well as human rights and democracy and law. And this then filters into additional support by way of individual countries, not only harmonizing policies, legislations and regulations, but creating a determined sense of the importance of addressing corruption, especially with respect to transnational opportunities.
Right. Okay, there is a point I'll make. I'll come back to that in a moment. Alexander, what are some of the opportunities that you perhaps see that have not been capitalized on in this fight against corruption?
Thank you. One of the things I would say is this. We have institutions, multiple institutions that are charged with fighting corruption. But I think very little is given to them when it comes to resource allocation and also the media outreach that you need to have. Why do I say so? For instance, when you finance one agency of government that is charged with fighting corruption, and you do not give equivalent or near equivalent of resource allocation to other sister agencies, then I can tell you, you are engaging in what I would call the battle of pygmies, where one pygmy thinks is taller than the others. The opportunity that I see from our perspective as prosecutors is this. The office of the DPP, currently as constituted, we have spread out to the entire country. We have actually complied with the constitutional dictate of devolution of service, so that a man sitting in Mandera witnessing a corruption-related offense can, within a very short time, relay that information to those that must know. A man sitting in Busia can do the same. A woman sitting in Kwale can do the same. So we have the opportunity in the sense that we have enough human capital at the moment that can help us fight corruption. So all we need to do is prioritize resource allocation to the agencies that we really want to fight corruption. But let me emphasize one thing. Justice is not like a plate of rice that you just walk into a kitchen. Within 5 minutes, you have something on your table. It is a chain. It takes time, resources, and it also requires some patience. So that when people view the agencies that are fighting corruption as being not vigilant enough, they should also be fair to us. Because I can today make a decision to prosecute someone, but it doesn't lie in my province to decide whether this man is guilty or not.
Right.
So I have to involve the judiciary and many other actors. So the idea is resource allocation, prioritization of what we are doing, and then making sure we've got every cog moved.
Okay, thanks. Sylvester, I'll bring you in just a moment, but Abdi would just like to make a point related to that. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to add to what my colleague, Mr. Muteti, has said. I think some of the opportunities that really we are not implementing adequately is we have a Minister of ICT. And one of the best ways in fighting corruption is cutting that chain of human-to-human contact. If we automate all government services, that will really help a lot. So you don't need to limit Mr. Muteti to do something. You do online, and the service will be provided to you, and there you will not able to get, even though who Muteti is. The second thing, which actually I think is also, we really need to, with the help of the legislature, try to put some of the laws that are still loose. For instance, when fighting corruption, and we look at Chapter 6, there's still a lot which needs to be done. We need to capitalize on that, improve on the capacity and the way we can able to use that one, which has been somehow, with all due respect, watered down from the time it was proposed. And then finally, I think we have adequately put in place, with the assistance of the help of the head of state, the multi-agency. I think this is an instrument which we can use, an institution where all the law enforcement and the intelligence agencies are involved. If we really put our resources together, and the way Mr. Muteti said, with adequate resourcing, we can able to use this and we can fight the corruption easily. Thank you.
Right,
Samiti, I just wanted to complement this further too on the one-stop. I mean, specifically on the business indicators. And we've seen some great innovations by way of our ability to register land titles electronically and automate this process. We've seen consistent efforts by government to automate the process of registering businesses, and also the entire processes with respect to export and import of goods. And I think that we're beginning to see a great deal of automation within this scope, creating interactiveness and openness, and thereby preventing corruption.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Sylvester, let me bring you in now. We do often hear about the EACC fighting corruption and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, but tell us what the Office of the Auditor General is doing in this fight. What action are you taking, or your office?
Thank you very much. The Office of the Auditor General is actually given a mandate as per the Constitution, Article 229. And that article 229 gives the mandate of the Auditor General to audit all public entities which are funded with the public funds. So the first thing is the Office of the Auditor General publishes and publicizes audit reports, both in electronic and also in print media. That is a major breakthrough because everybody, including Nation Media Group, every day, it actually has to carry some reports, which is very important, and it is a deterrent measure. Also, we make various recommendations to reduce corruption. Even before our audit reports are finalized, we usually have put a lot of recommendations to our entities, and that one has also reduced corruption. We also establish what we call a follow-up mechanism on the implementation, because Public Accounts Committee, Public Investment Committee, and other agencies, when they give their reports, they are recommendations. So we have to ensure that these implementations have been carried out as per the requirement of the report of Parliament. And where there are deviations, we report that the recommendations have not been carried out. We have continuous presence in our counties. Today, when you go to every county, we have 11 hub offices, and those offices, they are charged with the responsibilities of like 3 to 4 counties. So our presence is felt everywhere. We have also actually what we call a whistleblowing line in our office. Now, citizen, anybody who has actually spotted, who has encountered corruption, there's a hotline to call. And what is very important, and I think it's important I tell the public here, we have engaged what we call citizen engagement accountability framework, whereby, because citizens are everywhere and they know the projects which are being implemented by the national government, by the county government, they are able to report where they will see there's corruption, there's wastage, and we are able to fast track and flag out that matter, and we follow. And more important, we have been able to engage with our colleagues, EACC, DCI, and DPP. We have been coming into some collaboration whereby we do some joint audits, especially where we have forensic audits. Okay. And I think that one, to some extent, it has really played a very major role, fight against corruption.
All right, thanks so much for that. Now, of course, we're talking about corruption on a grand scheme, but we also see corruption on a much smaller scale in our everyday lives. Abdi, what is being done to address the small-scale corruption, handing over that 500 shillings to a police officer to get away from a traffic offence? Because really, a lot of people tend to think that corruption is just the way of life in Kenya. It is how you just get through the tough times.
Thank you so much. I am very happy that you have mentioned that, because many a time we are told, where are you always going for the small fish? Why not the big fish? But in our perception, in our mode of operandi, we don't really look corruption as, although we have got the high stakeholding, what you call the high impact cases, we look at every corruption as corruption. And if you start learning taking 50 shillings, believe me, you will also take 50 million at the end of the day, because you are just trying to coach yourself a small amount. As you are given opportunity, they would also steal 50 million. Let me give you the image of when you talk about that 50 shillings which a policeman takes on the road. Here is a policeman takes a 50 shillings bribe for a vehicle which is highly overcrowded, and with overcrowding which is almost a few kilometers later after he took the 50 shillings, the vehicle overturns and 50 Kenyans are dead. Their money is small, but the impact is not. And this is really what we want the Kenyan citizens, not to give in to requests of asking for bribe, and they, oh, you ask them why but it is the normal. Why has an evil become normal? Because we have made it. We have made it to be normal, and we want every Kenyan really to stand up and say no to corruption, even if it is on the road or where, and believe me, you will one day be successful. And I just want to mention, as earlier I mentioned, that there's a law, there's a sort of what you call liturgy in reporting. ESCC has 11 regional offices at the center, but we are also present at 50 Huduma centers. Okay. And we have online what you can report anonymously without anybody knowing. And we're very happy that the Kenyans who are really doing this work and publicizing, and the media and everybody else. So the issue of this small token type of corruption, which people say it is a small fish, is not small fish. It denies that child who is supposed to register for his birth certificate for the examination. And we have seen many children lose because they want just that corruption, because they cannot get that 50 shillings which is there. So we fight corruption, whether it is 50 shillings or 50 million or a billion, because it is an evil and it is denying that citizen's right. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Kevin, tell us, yes, who is that?
If you allow me.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you allow me just to come in.
Sure.
There is one thing that my colleague from the ESCC has said, which needs to be really the theme that Kenyans should take for this year and years to come. We have reached a point where now the fight against corruption should not be viewed as a government responsibility.
Sure. Right.
It is a societal responsibility, and we have to do serious cultural change in terms of how we approach matters corruption. For instance, if for you to ask your son or daughter to go and pick a bread from the next shop, you've got to ask them, okay, go pick a bread, but then on the side, you have these 2 shillings for you to buy a sweet. That is corruption. And that's the thing we need to talk about very frankly, so that the Kenyans who cry for what we would call redemption from the devil of this corruption thing should know it is their responsibility, much as it is government's responsibility, to wipe out corruption. And they must say no to it, and make sure every action that they take is geared towards that. Otherwise, we will just be singing, a musical kind of chairs game. You're saying government is not doing this, government is not doing this. What are you doing as a person? Correct. Because who is this who puts a matatu on the road and every day tells the conductor and the driver, drop 50 shillings where you find them? And that you start complaining when people die that officers are not working. Why are you facilitating them? If you must be arrested and charged, that should be it. Face the music if you must. Do
you think it's too late for us as a society to change that sort of a mindset? Are we not too deep-rooted in our ways?
Not at all. I can tell you for free, if we went down and looked at our education curriculum, for example, we are now talking about competence-based curriculum. What is it that we are teaching these children who are coming up? We can intervene at that stage and tell them in unequivocal terms that corruption is not our way. And there will be leaders who will emerge from that team and will fight this thing to the end.
Okay.
But we can keep talking about it for the years that we would want to, but achieve nothing.
All right. Okay, Kevin, let me bring you into this. Tell us, what is the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption?
Well, indeed, it's an apex effort with respect to addressing rampant and political corruption, preventing and detecting, as well as eradicating corruption, promoting that regional consensus, both from a public sector as well as private sector. Within this context, it also supports other frameworks of cooperation, which include RECs like the East African Community, the ECOWAS, SADC, complements their capabilities towards ensuring that they are able to create necessary frameworks and structures within individual economic states and partner states. Within this context, if you look at EAC and very closely linked to the African Union Convention on Prevention of Combating Corruption, several initiatives have been developed, which include through the treaty, which espouses both governance, democracy, law, accountability, transparency and social justice, promoting equal and gender opportunity and human rights. But within that framework too, and further aggregation takes place by way of a draft EAC protocol on good governance and access of justice, as well as an EAC integrity and anti-corruption bill 2019. And at the grassroots level, in order to really promote anti-corruption, are structures like the one-stop border posts within partner states, which mirror one another and are an innovation by way of ensuring that they harmonize all aspects of transboundary movement of people as well as trade. And this is supported by various other technology systems like the regional electronic device tracking systems, which ensure that NTBs are mitigated, but at the same time their ability to ensure that there's a flow of goods with the minimal challenges faced with respect to corruption, and the entire automation of the transboundary and transnational trade systems. So all of this has an implication right from, grassroots level all the way to creating that framework in support of national policies, legislations, regulations. What it's also trying to do through the 16 sector councils is to promote a standardization, so as to ensure that that harmonization is measurable, it's able to be implemented, and that indeed partner states are developing capacities which are harmonized throughout the entire region. This plays a significant role in creating a structure, a systemic intervention in order to address the challenge of corruption under one roof of partner states, and at the same time benchmark and be able to further promote the necessary innovation and cooperation.
Right. Sylvester, with all these efforts that are being put in place locally here in Kenya and in the region as a whole, do you foresee a corruption-free Kenya realistically?
Thank you very much. As I had indicated before, corruption really, it has a long way to go. But from my perspective and the perspective of the office, there is need actually to enforce what we can say. There are some aspects of the Constitution which are very clear. Article 10 is very clear about the national values and principles of governance. Here we are talking about the transparency, accountability, integrity, sustainable development, and all those things. Ideally, if these issues are implemented, and they are enabling legislations, if they are implemented to the latter, it can take us far. Article 73, we don't have to go very far. Principles of leadership and integrity. Accountability to the public for decisions and actions. I have heard what my colleagues have said there. If we have a national conversation about the issues of corruption. And every sector, public or private, takes this personal responsibility to spread this gospel about anti-corruption. This culture change which Mr. Moteti talked about, it will be very key. I also believe if, like Article 201, principles of public finance, and the Constitution has exactly explained about how resources must be used without wastage. When you look at the reports of the Auditor General, we have talked a lot of wastage in the resources. And if this Article 201, if it is followed to the latter, we are not going to have a problem. Even Article 232, about the values and principles of public service, whereby high standards of professional ethics are supposed to be taken into consideration. So ideally, I can see if some of these articles, which focus on the management of public finances and leadership and integrity, if they are taken into account, we can be there. And in the Office of the Auditor General, we have really actually, we have raised the bar, especially when it comes to these issues of corruption, both internal and external. Because even now, any issues which we feel there is need to be audited, we are even doing transversal audits. And actually, these are both the deterrent and also actually putting those who have been found actually culprit into the law. So me, I can see, I have no doubt in my mind, the systems we have set in the Office of the Auditor General, because we have computerized everything. We have computerized our audit, and we are able to trace. We are able to have systems in place whereby even we can be able to see the transaction, even through IFMIS. And we are able to raise red flag, and the Auditor General can order, let this issue be investigated, even before actually some of the things have been finalized. And that's the reason why you have seen most of the reports, which are in the print media. Actually, most of the auditees, they are a bit very careful now, especially when they're handling this. And finally, there's one thing which I want to mention here, especially in the accounting background. Our public sector is purely cash accounting. And if this country is not going to move to accrual accounting, where you can have audit trail, most of the East African countries, they have moved to accrual accounting. Then corruption, it might be a big problem, because cash accounting, there is no more of trail, and most of the assets, like a vehicle, it is expensed. But in accrual accounting, you will be able to trace that vehicle regardless of the period it was purchased until it is fully depreciated, even when it is fully depreciated. Okay. So this accountability, it's very key in my view. The accounting framework, which will be used in public sector, if we move to accrual accounting, I can assure you corruption will be dealt a big blow.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Abdi, you want to comment on that? Go ahead.
I just wanted to add what my colleague said. In fact, we should never even think whether we will defeat corruption or not. We should be determined to eradicate corruption in Kenya. That should be our slogan. The issue of showing indecisiveness and what you call defeatism type of attitude is what is killing us. If you have seen, if we have the people, when you see a few people like the guy who was from Masai Mara, what do you call, whistleblower, when you see people like that, then you will see some hope that there are people, there are few Kenyans who are for. And believe me, we don't have time, but if I could go to some of the successes that we did. We have interrupted multi-billion shillings because of good Kenyans who feel this is wrong, and they report. We are able to defeat and able to eradicate Kenya from Kenya corruption is only change of attitude, as Mr. Muteti said earlier, and we need to show a good example. If me as a parent, I will contribute money on the pretext of prayer day holding before exams, and we're going to give the supervisors so they can allow our children to steal the exam, then we're not going to get rid of that.
Yeah.
We're already teaching our children. And those are the same people who are going to become the accountants tomorrow because you stole the exam for them by you as a parent, you pay money to the principal that we are going to hold a prayer day, but it's not a prayer day, it's money for actually bribing the supervisors. This is where we want to change.
All right.
Yeah, and if we really have determination, we can get rid of out of this vice. It is not something which God brought for us to live with it, because it's an evil act.
Okay, thanks very much. So really a change of attitude is what is required, although that isn't always easy. But in the meantime, because we've got to wrap up soon, Kevin, I'll ask you, what are some of your recommendations that you believe can help bolster this fight?
Indeed, I think that we need to double our efforts, especially in these COVID-19 times when we need to promote the highest level of lives and livelihoods. And that means that we need to put more on technology. Technology, while it can't solve every problem, can highlight and thereby promoting interactivity and openness in addressing some of the challenges that we face. There's a constant requirement for innovation within the EAC context. We have a growing consensus by way of ensuring that we are now in the phase of developing recovery of the economy, which means that we need to look into the market systems within the context of our economy and ensure that we have as little wastage as possible and address this challenge collectively. Indeed, the approach that we're taking within the Kenyan context by way of Cliff, promoting that cooperation, bringing about multiple stakeholders, and bringing an accountability by way of their leadership to bring their networks and structures to bear with this challenge is a fascinating innovation, and I do believe that from this social perspective is a solution.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Alexander, realistically, let's say in the next 5 years, on the 10th commemoration of this African Anti-Corruption Day, where would you like to see Kenya?
Well, thank you. I would say this. In fact, as we celebrate that 10 years, Kenya should be the leader in this fight. Looking at most African countries, we are one of the very few countries in the world that hosts a permanent seat of the UN. For the UN to have identified Gigiri as a potential place to put up whatever we have there, then they must have run a test and engaged the people and the pool of personnel. And this I can say without any fear of contradiction, that we have such a very powerful gene pool of potential persons who not only can inform local discussions and deliberations about how we go about these things, but can be world leaders. If everybody is committed to this fight and they offer themselves diligently and honestly, there is no doubt that we shall conquer the ghost of corruption and slay it.
Okay.
The problem we have is this: we speak from both ends of the mouth. In the morning, we are saying, you are not fighting corruption, but in the evening, we are busy practicing it. So that for our people to realize the change that they so much aspire to see, the first thing should be say no to corruption. Okay. And that will be the game changer.
All right. Thanks so much, Alexander. Sylvester, your final thoughts. What is your message to Kenyans on this African Anti-Corruption Day?
My message is simple. Cooperate with the institutions charged with the fight against corruption and do so honestly.
All right. Sylvester, your remarks to Kenyans?
My remarks to Kenyan is there is a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope, and The fight against corruption, I'm sure it will be won, and it will be won squarely. From the Office of the Auditor General, and this is something I can also put across. There are very critical recommendations by Parliament. Those recommendations, if they are really implemented, and when you go to those reports, PIC reports, you will see which agency is supposed to take over this, to do this. But here in here out, you will find some of these recommendations have not been acted upon. So if these recommendations can be acted upon, I can tell Kenyans there will be no corruption, because Parliament has given very fantastic recommendations on our reports. But those reports, as auditors, we just come in and reiterate. We say, although PIC have said X, Y, Z, this has not been done. So there is a lot of hope, and it will be won sooner than later.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Sylvester. And finally, Dr. Malim, how can Kenyans report cases of graft?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, before I go to the reporting, I would like to rejoin our colleagues. We can fight corruption. Let's stop politicizing and ethnicizing corruption. Don't come singing, saying that you have, what do you call, accused our thief or whatever. Corruption is corruption. Let's fight corruption, and we'll be able to win the war. As for reporting, we have various places, as I mentioned, 50 what do you call the Huduma centers, 11 regional offices which are in the country, our integrity center. We have also the online system. If you go to our website, you get the telephone numbers there, which are anonymous, and you can also report without being known. Then at the same time, if you are not able to write or whatever, please walk into any of our offices or to any of our agencies who are there and bring the report. We'll be very happy to assist you.
All right.
And finally, I just want to say, Kenyans, don't wait for EACC or DCI or whatever to fight corruption. It's a responsibility for each and every one of us. And we thank the media and the Kenyan public for being good partners. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much to all my guests on this day, the African Anti-Corruption Day 2021. I'm afraid we are out of time, but thanks to the Commissioner from the EACC, that is Dr. Abdi Malim. We've also had Alexander Muteti, Senior Assistant at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Sylvester Kinney, the Deputy Auditor General, Finance Audit Services at the Office of the Auditor General, and also Dr. Kevit Desai, Principal Secretary of the State Department for the East African Community, Ministry of EAC and Regional Development. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you to you for watching. Certainly hope that you have some takeaways from that conversation. That's all for now. Stay tuned though. NTV Jioni is, or rather NTV Weekend is coming up next at 7 o'clock, and I'll be back at 9 o'clock with NTV Weekend Edition. Bye-bye.